There's a delicate balance between public policy and personal security. That balance can often be tipped in the lives of those that are in the spotlight. Whether you're a huge fan of the royal family or maybe not so much, that's okay. It's still pretty intriguing to learn about the complex web of Prince Harry's legal battles that have made headlines. Today's guest is going to untangle some of it for us and tell us how those battles can actually relate to our own lives. Ashton and Price is one of Sacramento County's most prominent personal injury law firms, working on behalf of accident victims and their families. And here to show us some of the twists and turns of Prince Harry's legal maze, we have Craig Fontaine Ashton of Ashton and Price. Good to have you with us, Craig. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
So first, let's talk about the recent alleged paparazzi car chase that made headlines in New York back in this May. We hear the expression, everything can happen in a New York minute, but can you give us a little background as to what actually happened?
Right. So Prince Harry has made it kind of his force du jour to change the way that the paparazzi deals with famous people. And so he references back to the tragic loss of his mother in August of 1997. And he was in New York, and they went on a slow speed chase because you can't, in the traffic in New York, go high speed.
Right.
And they called it near catastrophic, which is a bit hyperbolic. The reason he is involved in the 6 lawsuits we'll talk about is because he has anger and anguish over the loss of his mother, which he says translates into the way that he's treated as a public figure based upon the way the paparazzi kind of hound him. If you remember, and this is tragic, it's not taken away from this, but Princess Diana's driver, Henry Paul, had 3 times the legal limit of alcohol in his system, Prozac, an anti-alcohol medication, and also another medication which he shouldn't be driving with. He was going 120 miles an hour before the crash. So the idea is that the car crash, if you look at it as a lawyer, was not based upon the paparazzi, although he might have been a nuisance and annoying. It was because the driver of the limousine was 0.228 blood alcohol level and had Prozac in his system and was driving 120 miles an hour in a 30-mile-an-hour zone. So the idea that Prince Harry now is pushing this right to privacy, as they say in Great Britain, privacy issues, based upon the fact that his mother tragically died, not because of an annoying paparazzi, which are clearly annoying, but because of a drunk limo driver that was basically hired by the Ritz, which was Dodi Fayed's father owned the Ritz in Paris, is essentially trying to dictate public policy, which he's trying to do in Great Britain in regards to the right to privacy, based upon the impetus of losing his mother, which was really more of a drunk driving case.
So let's talk about a lot of people here, paparazzi, sort of have those negative implications. Prince Harry is appealing for security in terms of protection, and the most recent case to privately pay for Metropolitan Police. What do you think about that?
Well, it's the High Court in London said, look, if we have a Russian oligarch, or let's say Jay-Z rolls into London, he doesn't get to buy the police, the Metropolitan Police, right? Scotland Yard isn't going to be now Jay-Z or your private police force. So we have public police for public policing. And you are not special. You're no longer a working royal, so no. So he lost that case, and now he owes the costs on that. And now he's appealing that particular case, and I think he's going to lose that as well. And every time he loses, he's facing in the 6 lawsuits that he has about $20 million in court costs.
Wow.
Which is $5 million more than he paid for his Montecito mansion outside of Santa Barbara.
He's the first royal, I think, since 1890 to testify. Does that set a precedent? Does that help the case at all in terms of being in court as a royal in that regard?
So, a good story. So this is basically Prince Albert, who is Queen Victoria's son, and she was known for kind of a joyless prudishness, obsessed with making sure that you acted in a way that was behaving properly. Well, he had a gambling problem.
Oh, gosh, okay.
So he had to testify in 1891 based upon a baccarat game that went bad. So he was the last one to testify. He became King Edward VII.
Okay.
And so now we have Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, who is now testifying. He testified this week.
When we see the royals, sometimes people find that hard to relate to, but I think many people can relate to issues of privacy. Will anything you think trickle down that might impact your everyday person in terms of what we're seeing play out in the headlines?
So here's what Harry has to understand. His mother was a tragic loss. I mean, I don't care how jaded you are, it's a tragedy, but that was a drunk driving case. And to dictate public policy, because when you're in public, you have no reasonable expectation of privacy. We just can't as a society say, all right, and when you're in public, we're gonna have certain rules, because the legal system would be totally overwhelmed. So when you're in public, you have basically, it's fair game. Now, you can't put listening devices on your car because that's a trespass, but we already have laws for that. So what he's trying to push is basically a very unique situation driven by a drunk driving case that ultimately led to a tragedy, and trying to flip that into privacy, because you don't see these problems with other people, because we have lots of famous people in the world. Rihanna, Beyonce, Barack Obama. We don't have high-speed chases in their cases, and because we don't have drunk limo drivers.
Thank you so much. Well, we appreciate the insight, Craig. You don't have to be a prince or a pauper to find this information useful and definitely good behind-the-scenes stuff. Thank you. You can find out more by going to ashtonandprice.com/Sacramento.